Welcome back to the channel, US Rare Coins News, Top 1. Today we are looking at a coin that sounds incredibly rare, but there's a twist that might completely change how you see it. An 1845 Texas Washington State quarter dollar. If that name already feels a little off, you're right to question it. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this coin creates so much confusion, what people think they have, and how some versions can still be collectible, and even valuable in the right situation. So let's start with the basics. Bring the camera in close and imagine the coin in your hand. You see George Washington on the front, just like a modern US quarter. Clean profile, familiar look. Now flip it over. If it says, Texas, with a design representing the state, you might think you've got something historic going all the way back to the 1800s. But here's the reality. There is no official United States quarter from 1845 with George Washington on it. And there was no Texas state quarter in 1845 either. The Washington quarter design didn't even begin until 1932. And the Texas state quarter you're probably thinking of was actually released in 2004 as part of the 50 state quarters program. So if you ever see a coin labeled 1845 Texas Washington quarter, that's your first big clue. Something isn't right. Now here's where it gets interesting. Coins like this do exist, but they're usually replicas, novelty pieces, or fantasy coins. Some are made for collectors as souvenirs. Others are created to look old and rare, sometimes even with artificial aging to make them feel more authentic. So let's say you have one. What should you do? First, take a very close look. Zoom in on the details. Check the lettering. Does it look too modern? Too sharp? Or maybe uneven in a way that doesn't match real minting quality? Look at the edges. Real US quarters have very specific reeded edges. Replicas sometimes get this wrong. Now here's a small twist. Even though these aren't official US coins, some of them can still have value. Not because of rarity in the traditional sense, but because of demand. Certain collectors enjoy fantasy coins or historical-style replicas, especially if they're well-made or older issues from private mints, but this is where you need to be careful. Some sellers try to pass these off as real historical coins, which they are not. That's why understanding the history matters. In 1845, Texas actually became a U.S. state. That part is true. But no Washington quarter existed at that time. Now imagine this scenario. You're browsing online or going through a coin lot. You spot one of these. It looks old. The date says 1845. It mentions Texas. It feels important. That's the moment where knowledge saves you money, or helps you spot a unique collectible for what it really is. So what is it actually worth? Most replica or novelty versions of an 1845 Texas Washington quarter usually sell for just a few dollars, maybe $5 to $20 depending on quality and material. If it's made of silver by a private mint or part of a limited collectible set, it might go higher, sometimes into the $50 to $100 range, but it's important to be clear. These are not official US mint coins, and they do not carry the same value as real historical currency. So here's the question for you. Have you ever come across a coin that looked rare, but turned out to be something completely different? Or do you actually own one of these Texas-themed pieces? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to know what you found. Top 2. Today we are looking at a modern coin that most people spend without thinking, but a few rare versions of it have already sold for far more than just 25 cents. The 2016 Washington quarter. Now here's the part that surprises people. This isn't just one coin. In 2016, multiple designs were released, and some of them, depending on mint marks, condition, and tiny errors, can turn an everyday quarter into something collectors are actively hunting. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for and what your coin could really be worth. So let's start with what you might already have in your pocket. Hold up a 2016 quarter and bring the camera in close. On the front, you'll see the familiar face of George Washington. Clean, modern design. Look to the side and you'll spot a small letter, either P, D, or S. That tiny mint mark tells you where the coin was made, Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. Now flip it over. This is where things get interesting. In 2016, the U.S. Mint released coins as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program. That means you could have designs like Shawnee National Forest, Cumberland Gap, Harper's Ferry, Theodore Roosevelt National Park, or Fort Moultrie. Each one represents a different place in American history. Here's a great moment for visuals. Slowly rotate the coin under light. Let the camera catch the details, the trees, buildings, landscapes. These designs aren't just coins. They're miniature pieces of art, but now comes the part most people completely miss. Even though millions of these coins were made, not all of them are equal. Let's talk about condition first. Most 2016 quarters you find are circulated. They've been used, scratched, worn down. But if you find one that looks almost brand new, sharp details, bright luster, no visible damage, you might have something worth keeping. Now zoom in closer. Look at the lettering. Words like Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date. Do you notice anything unusual? Any doubling, where the letters look slightly duplicated or blurred? That could be a double die error, and here's another detail collectors watch for. Off-center strikes. This is when the design isn't perfectly aligned, leaving part of the coin blank. It looks like a mistake, and it is, but that's exactly why it can be valuable. You might also find die cracks, small raised lines running across the surface. Or coins with weak strikes where certain details didn't fully form. Most people ignore these. Collectors don't. Now imagine this. You're paying for something, you get change back, and there's a 2016 quarter in your hand. It looks normal at first. But then you notice something slightly different. Maybe the shine is stronger. Maybe the design looks sharper. That's the moment where a simple coin becomes something worth checking closely, and here's a small twist that makes this even more interesting. San Francisco minted special proof versions of these coins. These are not meant for circulation. They have mirror-like finishes and extremely sharp details. If you ever come across one of these outside of a collection, that's something to pay attention to immediately. Now let's talk about what these coins are actually worth. A normal circulated 2016 quarter is still worth about 25 cents. If you find one in uncirculated condition, it can be worth $1 to $5 depending on quality. High-grade coins, especially those graded MS67 or higher, can sell for $50 to a few $100s, and coins with strong, visible errors, like doubling or off-center strikes, can sometimes reach a few $100s or more, depending on how unique they are. Proof coins from San Francisco can also sell for several dollars to over $100 if they're in perfect condition. So the same quarter you might ignore, could actually be worth much more if it has the right details. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever checked your pocket change for rare coins, or do you usually spend them without a second thought? And which design from 2016 do you like the most? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to see what you're finding out there. Top 3. Today we are looking at a coin that most people barely notice, but a few rare 2020 Washington quarters have already shocked collectors with how much they can sell for, and here's the twist. In 2020, something unusual happened during production. Fewer coins were released into circulation compared to normal years, and that alone made certain 2020 quarters harder to find. Add in a few rare errors and high-grade examples, and suddenly this everyday coin becomes something collectors are actively searching for. So let's break it down and see what you should be looking for. Start with the coin in your hand. Bring the camera in close. On the front, you'll see George Washington's portrait, clean and modern. Now look for the mint mark near his head. You might see a P for Philadelphia, D for Denver, or an S for San Francisco. That small letter is more important than most people realize. Now flip it over slowly. This is where 2020 gets interesting. There are 5 different reverse designs from 2020, part of the America the Beautiful series. You could have designs like American Samoa, Ware Farm, Salt River Bay, Marsh Billings Rockefeller, or Tallgrass Prairie. Each one tells a completely different story. Here's a great visual moment. Tilt the coin under light and let the design come alive. The bat design from American Samoa, for example, really stands out. If you have that one, zoom in on the details of the bats hanging upside down. It's one of the most talked about quarter designs in recent years, but now let's get into what really matters. Value. Most 2020 quarters are still worth just 25 cents. But not all of them. Condition is everything. If your coin looks brand new, with sharp edges and strong shine, it could already be worth more. High-grade coins, especially those graded at the very top levels like MS67 or higher, are much harder to find than people expect. Now look even closer, check the lettering. Liberty. In God we trust. The date. Do you see anything unusual? Any doubling or slight shadowing? That could be a double die error. Another thing to watch for is off-center strikes. If the design looks shifted and part of the coin is blank, that's a minting error. It might look like a mistake, but collectors pay attention to those, and then there are die chips and cracks. Small raised bumps or lines on the surface. These are tiny details, but they can make your coin unique. Now here's a moment to think about. Imagine you get change back from a store. You don't even look at it. But one of those coins is a 2020 quarter with a rare feature. Maybe a strong strike. Maybe an error. Maybe it's in near perfect condition. That's how easily valuable coins slip past people every day. And here's something else that makes 2020 special. San Francisco produced special proof and even limited circulation quality coins for collectors. These coins often have a sharper finish and cleaner look. If you ever spot one with an S mint mark, take a closer look immediately. Now let's talk real numbers. A regular circulated 2020 quarter is worth about 25 cents. An uncirculated coin in good condition can be worth $1 to $5. High-grade examples, especially those graded MS67 or higher, can sell for $50 to a few $100. Error coins, depending on how strong and visible the error is, can also reach into the hundreds, and certain San Francisco issues, especially in top condition, can sell for several dollars up to over $100. So the difference between a normal coin and a valuable one comes down to details most people never check. Now I want to ask you, have you ever actually looked closely at your pocket change, or do you just spend it without thinking? And which 2020 design do you like the most? The bat, the landscapes, or something else? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them all, and I'd love to hear what you're finding. Top 4. Today we are looking at a quarter that most people have spent without thinking twice, but a few 2001 Washington quarters have quietly sold for way more than 25 cents, and here's what makes this year interesting. In 2001, 5 different state designs were released, and some of them, depending on condition, mint mark, and small minting errors, can turn a simple coin into something collectors actually hunt for. Stick with me, because by the end, you'll know exactly what to check and what your coin could really be worth. So let's start with what you might already have. Hold up a 2001 quarter and bring the camera in close. On the front, you'll see George Washington's portrait. Clean, familiar design. Now look just to the side for a small letter. You might see a P, D, or an S. That tiny mint mark tells you where the coin was made, and yes, it matters. Now flip it over slowly. This is where 2001 gets exciting. There are 5 different designs from this year: New York, North Carolina, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Kentucky. Each one tells a story. You've got the Statue of Liberty on the New York coin, the Wright brothers' first flight on North Carolina, a sailboat on Rhode Island, maple trees on Vermont, and a horse with a fence on Kentucky. This is a perfect moment for visuals. Slowly rotate each coin under light. Let the details stand out. Zoom in on the Statue of Liberty. Then cut to the airplane on the North Carolina quarter. These small designs are what pull collectors in, but now let's get into what most people never check: condition. Most 2001 quarters are worn. Scratches, dull surfaces, faded details. But if you find one that still looks sharp, bright, and almost untouched, that's where things start to change. Zoom in on Washington's hair. Are the lines clear or worn flat? Look at the cheek and jawline. Then flip to the back and check the fine details in the design. Strong detail means higher value, but don't stop there. Now we look for errors, because this is where things get interesting. Check the lettering. Liberty. In God we trust. The state names. If you notice doubling, like a slight shadow around the letters, that could be a double die error. Look for off-center strikes. If the design is shifted and part of the coin is blank, that's a minting mistake. It might look strange, but collectors pay attention to that. You might also spot die cracks or small raised bumps on the coin. These are tiny details, but they can make your coin unique. Now imagine this. You're going through old coins, maybe a jar you haven't touched in years. You find a 2001 quarter. At first, it looks normal. But then you notice something: the shine is stronger, the details are sharper. That's the moment you stop and take a closer look, because this could be more than just a quarter. And here's something a lot of people miss: San Francisco minted proof versions of these coins. These were made for collectors, not circulation. They have a mirror-like finish and very sharp details. If you ever come across one, especially outside of a set, that's something to pay attention to. Now let's talk about what these coins are actually worth. A normal circulated 2001 quarter is usually worth just 25 cents. That if you find one in uncirculated condition, it can be worth around $1 to $5. High-grade coins, especially those graded MS67 or higher, can sell for $50 to a few $100s depending on the design and quality. Error coins, like strong doubling or off-center strikes, can also reach into the hundreds if they're clear and noticeable, and proof coins from San Francisco can range from a few dollars to over $100 in top condition. So the same coin you might ignore, could actually be worth much more with the right details. Now I want to ask you, do you check your coins before spending them, or do they just pass through your hands without a second thought? And which 2001 design is your favorite? The Statue of Liberty, the airplane, or something else? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to see what you're finding. Top 5. Today we are looking at a quarter that almost everyone has seen, but very few people realize that some 2000 Washington state quarters have sold for way more than just 25 cents, and here's the surprising part. The year 2000 was only the second year of the state quarters program, and demand was massive. Millions of coins were made, but a small number of them, with the right details, condition, or mint errors, have become seriously collectible. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for and how much your coin could actually be worth. So let's start with what you might already have. Hold up a 2000 quarter and bring the camera in close. On the front, you'll see George Washington. Same classic design. Now look for a small mint mark near his head. You might see a P, D, or an S. That tiny letter tells you where the coin was made, and it can make a difference in value. Now flip it over slowly. This is where 2000 gets interesting. There are 5 different state designs from this year: Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, and Virginia. Each one has its own unique story. You've got the Minuteman statue on Massachusetts, the Maryland State House, South Carolina's state symbols, the Old Man of the Mountain on New Hampshire, and the ships from Jamestown on Virginia. This is a great moment for visuals. Rotate each coin under light. Zoom in on the Minuteman. Then cut to the Old Man of the Mountain design. These details are what make collectors stop and look closer, but now let's talk about what really matters: condition. Most 2000 quarters you'll find are worn from circulation. Scratches, dull surfaces, faded details. But if you come across one that looks bright, clean, and nearly untouched, that's where the value starts to change. Zoom in on Washington's hair. Check the lines. Are they sharp or worn down? Now flip to the back and look at the fine details in the design. Strong, crisp features can make a huge difference, but here's where things get even more interesting: errors. Some 2000 state quarters have double die errors. Look closely at the lettering: Liberty, United States of America, or the state names. If you see a slight doubling or shadow effect, that's something collectors pay attention to. Another thing to watch for is off-center strikes. If part of the design is missing and shifted to one side, that's a minting error, and it can increase value significantly. You might also find die cracks or small raised bumps. These look minor, but they make each coin unique. Now imagine this. You're going through a jar of old coins. You pull out a 2000 quarter. It looks different. Cleaner. Sharper. Maybe there's a small error you've never noticed before. That's the moment where a simple coin turns into something worth checking carefully, and here's something many people miss: San Francisco minted proof versions of these coins. These have a mirror-like finish and very sharp details. If you ever find one outside of a collector set, that's something you don't want to ignore. Now let's talk about what these coins are actually worth. A regular circulated 2000 quarter is worth about 25 cents. If it's uncirculated and in good condition, it can be worth around $1 to $5. High-grade coins, especially those graded MS67 or higher, can sell for $50 to a few $100s depending on the design. Error coins, like strong doubling or off-center strikes, can also reach into the hundreds, and proof coins from San Francisco can range from a few dollars to over $100 in top condition. So the same quarter you might spend without thinking, could actually be worth much more if you know what to look for. Now I want to ask you, have you ever checked your coins carefully before spending them, and which 2000 state design is your favorite? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to see what you found. If you enjoyed this and want to learn more about valuable coins hiding in everyday change, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and watch the next video on your screen, because the next valuable coin might already be in your pocket, and all it takes is one closer look.